It is a huge honor to be in Scotland. Right now I'm in Glasgow, Scotland, podcast interviewing Dr. Anoop Maini. And thank you so much for doing my show. You have an amazing bio. Anoop qualified from King's College London in 1992. He then entered private practice, and in 2005 he established Aqua Dental Spa, a cosmetically focused clinic in London's West End, which he sold in 2015, and then started up a new clinic near his home in Harrow called Aqua Dental Clinic. He was elected as a board member of the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry in 2005, and then after 10 years on the board, served as president. Anoop's key interest in anterior alignment orthodontics as part of Smile Design. He was one of the first GDPs in the UK to offer this style of orthodontics, which led him to become the clinical ambassador for 6 Month Smiles, which was started in America by Ryan Swain.
That's
right. After several years with this company, he left in 2014 to establish the European Society of Aesthetic Dentistry and served as the founding president. Currently, Anoop is part of the teaching faculty of the IAS Academy, which is a collaboration between GDPs and specialists to offer orthodontic training pathways from simple to comprehensive orthodontics. Anoop, do you mind if I call you Anoop?
Absolutely fine.
Anoop, so you're working with orthodontists and orthodontists to help train GPs?
Absolutely. It's a collaboration between specialists and general dentists to try and look at the GDP market in orthodontics and to find a more evidence-based pathway for GDPs who want to start in the pathway of orthodontics and in a guidance and fully mentored way can progress up to do more advanced courses in comprehensive orthodontics, because for most GDPs, unless you go straight into orthodontics when you qualify, you don't get an opportunity to get into orthodontics again. And most dentists like myself find that, once you've been in general practice for a little while, that there is a call for having some orthodontic skills, and it's simple orthodontics. I think is very much in the realm of a GDP because it's something that's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And I feel that GDPs should be empowered to offer these sort of treatments, provided they're given the correct mentorship and correct training.
Well, there's one thing in common that every general dentist will say coming out of America, and I can't vouch for UK or Scotland, but in America, every dentist will say, when I came out of school, 2/3 of the class went to the big cities that had all the 9 specialties. But about 1/3 of the class goes to rural America, and at least 10 or 20% of the towns in America, there's 19,022 towns, and a good 10 to 20% don't have any specialists. And they always say, in dental school, the endodontist taught me how to do root canals, the oral surgeons taught me how to pull teeth, the pediatric dentist taught me how to do kids, but the orthodontist didn't teach me one thing. And I came all the way out of dental school, and now I'm in a small town of 1,500. I got a 6-year-old with a crossbite, and they didn't even cover that in 4 years of dental school. Why do you think that is?
I think we're fundamentally got the same problem in the UK as well. Orthodontists the orthodontic faculty seem to view orthodontics as being something specific to their own speciality, and not one that should be endorsed or carried out by general dental practitioners, which is a shame because just like yourself in the States, we have GDPs who are in areas where there aren't orthodontists available, where the orthodontists may be inundated with huge waiting lists, and also the way that the state is funded in terms of NHS care. The NHS can only fund more difficult cases. So the lighter cases, which are classified as cosmetic, the poor patients don't get the treatment. And that's where they want to come out and seek treatment with us. And the other problem that we have is a lot of people who had orthodontics as minors, when they grow up, the retention protocols are so poor in terms of the way it's state funded that most relapse. The majority of orthodontic cases that are carried out as teenagers relapse when they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, which is a common phenomenon. It's those patients don't really want to go through a comprehensive plan again. All they want to do is get that little bit of anterior alignment as part of a cosmetic procedure. They view it as cosmetic dentistry. And therefore there's a whole remit of patients out there which the orthodontists aren't really catering for, because most of the time they're spent dealing with the severe malocclusions in children. So there's a big remit for the involvement of GDPs in orthodontics. And I think now in the UK, fortunately, in the last couple of years, the orthodontics have woken up to the GDP market. They understand that GDPs have got a place in offering orthodontics. And I feel more are beginning to formulate a synergy or collaboration with GDPs to try and offer some basic training, and also for the specialists to also show GDPs what they can do, because a lot of GDPs don't really understand what a specialist does. A bit like if we're doing endodontics, what is the difference between a simple and complex case? What are the possibilities? I mean, can an endodontist save that tooth? Is this, it may be beyond my skill set, but an endodontist may be able to rescue the tooth. With orthodontics, it's the same thing. We don't know what we don't know. So it's really good to have a collaboration with the orthodontist who can show us what they can offer, and we can then refer on the cases which are appropriate for their care.
And the general dentist, everyone agrees that the more orthodontic training a general dentist has, the more orthodontics they refer.
Correct.
I mean, if you don't see a crossbite, if you don't see a problem, how can you? And then a lot of orthodontists say, dentists say, well, I'm not sure about something. You might want to see an orthodontist. But if you're educated and you look at that with passion and say, hey, we really have a problem here and we really need to intervene now while she's still
absolutely
manageable.
Right.
And then the knowledge and the passion comes out, then the mom's more likely to drive to the next town and see an orthodontist. But if you just say, you might want to get that looked at, or I'm not sure,
Absolutely, because I think a part of the initial diagnosis has to get involved with the GDP. The GDP's got to be able to recognise the malocclusion to get the appropriate referral out, and most of the GCPs are undertrained. They don't realise there's a problem developing, and the interception becomes a little bit too late. So I agree with you 100%.
I call this show Dentistry Uncensored because I don't like to talk about what everyone agrees on. I see, treat other people like you want to be treated. I see a lot of dentists that make their kids get braces and bleaching. But then when the patient comes in off the street, they file down a lot of teeth and do veneers. Veneers make me cringe because you're not as old as I am, but I've been around the sun 53 times. When I got out of school in the 80s, a lot of these guys doing upper 10 veneers, I saw what those looked like 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later. When you drill off the enamel of the tooth, you condemn it to a life of retreatment. And the best thing for the tooth is don't freaking touch it. And with their kids, they do orthodontics, bleaching, they don't touch the tooth. I think a lot of these veneers are aggressive.
I agree. Well, I'll give you a slightly interesting story myself, because my mouth has got 28 veneers. So I've been fully rehabbed. And if I approached my own case today, I would not have had veneers. So I came from a discipline where I was a heavy cosmetic dental practice, where we used to do wall-to-wall veneers. I understand the impact, been in practice for now 25 years. I've seen those patients come back 10 years later. I've seen the repercussions. I've seen the problems with my own mouth and things breaking, busting, occlusal problems. So I soon understand. That's one of the drivers for me to get involved with orthodontics, because if the teeth were in the wrong place, if you can just put them in a better place, you can be far more conservative with your preparations. In fact, you can almost avoid the preparations, because we've got fantastic advancements in resin bonding, with whitening procedures, that almost those veneers are almost superfluous. And in fact, in my own clinics these days, I do very few. I used to do almost 3 or 4 complete smile designs a week. And I would probably say now I'm probably doing 1 a month, because most of the work is now orthodontically driven. So there is a big shift and paradigm shift, and it is filtering through at the moment.
And you also are seeing, when people are doing veneers, where they're necessary, they're trying to do no prep veneers. Do you see a place for no prep veneers? To keep the restoration on enamel as opposed to shaving out the enamel and trying to bond to dentin?
I think there is a place for, it's all about case selection, because everyone goes straight to a non-prep veneer. There are positions where you do need veneers, and if you speak to some technicians, they do need the room. They need the room for the colour, they need the room for the strength, they maybe need to change the guidances. So, to just automatically go to minimalism is not the right answer. It's what's right for the case. Sometimes you can get away with non-prep, that's fine. Sometimes you do need to prep. I'm not an anti-veneer person, but I feel veneers need to be done in the right places. Sometimes you have to take a tooth out when you have to take the tooth out. Minimalism is about the least you needed to do to get the final outcome. So sometimes you do need to prep teeth.
I want to ask you another question. Some of my orthodontist friends tell me that you shouldn't do short-term orthodontics until you at least understand comprehensive orthodontics. Like a good friend, the only orthodontist I know in America who's a board-certified orthodontist, who taught at University of California, San Francisco, and University of Detroit, was Richard Litt. And he ran 2 different universities ortho, and he's the only guy that actually lectures to us low-life, scumbag general dentists. And he says, you know what, before you go to a weekend class and learn short-term, go take his full-term ortho. Do you believe, do you agree with that, or do you think you can just learn short-term without learning comprehensive?
I think coming in from someone who was very heavily involved with the original 6 months miles and the development of short-term orthodontics, I think the problem now is short-term orthodontics has almost lost its definition. And I feel at the moment a lot of GDPs that get into orthodontics are almost approaching cases, and their case selection or case remits are way beyond what these systems were capable of, what were taught. And I think that's where problems are developing, because litigation for orthodontics in the UK amongst GDPs has gone through the roof. It went up 400% last year. And the problem is that, I don't like the term short-term orthodontics at the moment. I had a recent meeting with the British Orthodontic Society, part of an advisory panel, and one thing that we were talking about is the definition of the term. And, short-term orthodontics, what does it mean? Does it mean that the orthodontic is short-term? Is it clear to the patients what they're getting? What's the difference between comprehensive and short-term orthodontics? I think the better terminology for a lot of GDPs is anterior alignment orthodontics, because it's more objective limited, it's restricted to the anterior zone, and it's about improving smiles. So for my belief at the moment is I think should GDPs do orthodontics? Yes. But I think a lot of GDPs that are doing orthodontics at the moment shouldn't be doing orthodontics. They need to rein in, because they're putting patients at risk, because they've taken, there's so many now companies out there, and a lot of them are teaching GDPs in very short time periods to approach very, very complex cases, which with anterior alignment, our remits are very tight, very simple, they're intercanine, only 2-3 millimeters of crowd-in, so they're very, very simplistic cases. And I feel, and working with my specialist colleagues, you can learn that pretty basically within a few days, but of course every single case still needs to be mentored. Your training doesn't finish on the course, your training continues with the mentorship. So it's basically the IAS Academy, which I'm a part of. We teach, after we've done the teaching, every single case that comes through to us gets fully mentored and fully vetted. So no one can approach a case unless one of our mentors, which is a group of either experienced GDPs like myself or the specialists, actually look at the case and say this is suitable. So we pre-vet every single case. Because one thing that you can't teach a GDP is how to actually completely diagnose a malocclusion correctly.
And this is on your IASortho.com website?
That's correct.
And what does the IAS stand for again? International?
No, it's the Intelligent Alignment Systems. It's something
Intelligent Alignment Systems, which is IASortho.com.
Correct. And I basically, the person who put it together is a guy called Dr. Tiff Qureshi. Now, some people may know him.
Yeah, the Inman aligner.
Absolutely.
He invented that.
He did. With Donald Inman invented the appliance, but he was basically behind the training programs.
Yeah.
And one thing that's been very careful is the planning behind the Inman aligners and about the case assessments, the diagnosis, and he's translated that through to form an academy. So we have different modules.
So TIFF is in this too?
TIFF is, yep. TIFF is the Inman aligner. We have a guy called George Perez, who used to be the leading trainer for Invisalign. In fact, he designed most of the attachments for Invisalign. He now does the clear aligner module for us. I do the GDP fixed simple anterior alignment course, and then we have Professor Ross Hobson, who does the advanced course for us, which is a 14-month course, which has 17-day modules. So,
online or in class?
These are all in class.
These are all in class? Do you have any online?
Nothing online.
I think the best marketing you could do is go on to Dental Town and do an ortho online course, so they get to meet the instructors and put some of the curriculum on there, so they can sit there and say, I like that instructor, this is informed, I want to go take more the hands-on class. Yeah,
I can see the benefit of that. I mean, some things that I know...
Because I still have that issue. I hope Tiff is not listening to this, but there's still a lot of American dentists who don't know what an Inman aligner is.
Absolutely.
And so I think if you guys did more ortho course, I mean, I think if someone doesn't even know what an in aligner is, but it's so easy to watch a CE course on your phone. On the Dental Town, we there's 217,000 on the website, but 50,000 have downloaded the app. And most of these guys, we put 350 courses up. They've been viewed 600,000 times because it's so easy just to be sitting there at home and watch an hour course. And if they see the Inman aligner and they go, what's that? Then they watch it for an hour. The next thing they might do is say, I'm going to go take that course.
Absolutely. I think it's a great, especially online now. I mean, a lot of people don't realize what's available or what these appliances can actually achieve. So actually using it as a platform to actually promote the appliances and the training behind it, it seems like a phenomenal platform. It's something we should capitalize on. Yeah,
the thing I've noticed the most in orthodontics and I got out is the consumer patient brand name awareness in Invisalign.
Correct.
I mean, in my office, they come in and they ask for it by brand. They don't say clear. They don't say a clear aligner.
Correct.
They come in and say, I want Invisalign. Does the consumer ask for 6 Month Smile? I mean, is that a brand among the people, or is that a brand among dentists?
6 Month Smiles is a brand which has grown in popularity because the volume of dentists offering it.
But is it grown in popularity with dentists or the mass of people in the UK?
Invisalign, because Invisalign does direct marketing, is by far the biggest brand. If you want, the moment you put Invisalign on, you were going to get people ringing up asking for Invisalign.
Yeah.
6 Month Smiles tends to be those patients who've done their research a little bit and read about, so they've come to a clinic, they see the 6 Month Smile logo or the Clear Smile logo. Or the IAS Academy logo, and then they go and do their research because we have our YouTube videos, we have our websites, etc. So they tend to be patients because patients these days are very, very educated by what's online. You know, the internet now is their actual encyclopedia. It's their reference point, and they come in thinking they're experts. You know, they know what cross bites are, they know what overjets are, they know what overbites are. You know, the patients are far more resourced these days than they were maybe 5 or 10 years ago. You know.
An overjet flies over the horizon. That's how I remember that.
That's right.
Let's talk about Invisalign, because the one thing I've noticed is that, I mean, you can go to a restaurant in Singapore, Tokyo, Soweto, South Africa, and the waitress will ask about Invisalign. When she finds out you're a dentist, she's like, I want Invisalign. Yeah. I got out of school 29 years ago to now, I mean, that was the biggest consumer development.
Absolutely.
So, but I noticed that you said at your institute you switched clear Invisalign to clear aligner. What are your thoughts on Invisalign, and what do you think about the new generics coming out? What is it? Clear Correct or
Clear Correct? Our one, which is Clear Smile Aligner.
Clear Smile Aligner.
Yeah. So it's a lot of other.
So let's go with Invisalign to your brand. Invisalign to yours is Clear.
Clear Smile Aligner.
Clear Smile Aligner, and you can find that on IASortho.com. Okay, so talk about Clear Smile Aligner versus Invisalign. What's the difference?
Well, the difference, first of all, is one of the things about Invisalign is the huge laboratory fees.
Right.
And it makes it really, really difficult for a lot of GDPs to offer it in a capacity where they can actually...
And I don't mean to interrupt, but my rule is that when anybody comes to me with an idea, it's got to be faster, easier, higher in quality, and lower in price.
Yeah.
And that was why I didn't like Invisalign out of the gate, because rule number one is it took expensive ortho from $5,000 to $6,000.
Correct.
And that was a huge violation for me, and that's why I thought, okay, this is gonna be tough. Why did you make it expensive? You're supposed to use your brain to drive down costs so that patients have the freedom to afford what you sell, and their solution was more expensive.
Absolutely. I mean, plus the technologies have moved on with the printing technology, so a lot of places can manufacture a similar quality aligner as you can do with Invisalign. So, but the cost of manufacture for Clear Smile aligners is almost 50% that of Invisalign, so which makes it a lot more attractive.
So your clear aligner is half the price.
Yeah. And because our production costs in the UK, it's not an international shipping. You get quicker turnarounds. You have the same sort of. We don't call it attachments. We call it force drivers, because attachments is the Invisalign name. But you have the same methodologies. You put your talking into it. You put your rotation attachments in. Lots of these things are built in now. And the materials are getting better. We use Ventura, which is like a special type of aligner material, which is pretty similar to the Invisalign material. So, that comes from Brazil. So the actual quality of the actual appliances now are much better than where they were 5 or 6 years ago, because everything's moved on as well. Invisalign only just has to catch it. Being a very large AlignTech, being a very big company, has the advantage of obviously having the marketing perspective, direct to public. So you still will get patients coming in, and I get patients coming in asking for Invisalign, but by the time you give them all the options, they say, really, I could have this one for half the price. And that's what happens.
Yeah, and that's the biggest kudos I get in Invisalign is they built a consumer brand.
Yeah,
and probably the only one in ortho. Can you think of another brand that the consumer brand in the orthodontic space?
Absolutely, Damon's probably the closest. But Damon maybe.
So are you mostly a UK play? I mean, are you teaching this in America or Canada?
The IAS Academy is actually in 22 countries, but in terms of the additional, because and when I say 22 countries, from the Inman liner. The Inman liner has been around for quite a while. In fact, it's almost 12 years now. Just been teaching it and been having satellite laboratories around the world. So what we've been doing, I joined the company 2 years ago, and Professor Hobson came to us. We've created the whole academy, and that's what we're beginning to roll out now. So we're planning to go into places like South Africa, into Germany, in parts of Europe, into places like the Far East and places like Australia. So we are taking our products and our training, which because it's quite unique. There is no really a teaching pathway which takes the GDP from 0 up to a comprehensive course in modules. So the GDP can grow with the academy.
So I noticed you didn't mention the United States.
United States, we've got the Inman liner.
But I mean, are you going to roll this out in the United States?
Yeah, we are aiming to.
But have you started training there?
Only with the Inman liner.
Yeah, because London to Phoenix is a 9-hour direct flight, and we could help you with the lecture in Phoenix, and that's 4 million people and a good, great draw. If you ever want.
I think having come from the 6 months smart bag, I mean, the strength and the understanding for GDP Orthodontics in the States is there. When we approach it slightly differently, because we're now got full digital planning. So we pre-plan the case, a bit like Invisalign has a ClinCheck. We have like a ClinCheck version for our fixed braces. So we can actually digitally plan the cases beforehand. We can digitally place the brackets, so we can get communication between ourselves and the GDP on what the case is likely to look like, which they can communicate with the patient. So it all helps with the consent process. So the whole workflow is completely different now. And that's the way that dentistry is going. Everything's going far more digitally, and eventually we'll all have scanners and we'll be scanning it.
But what's got my ears perked up the most is I've lived in America half a century, and when you say braces, everyone cringes because they just think it's so bloody expensive. I mean, it's tough. So I think when you say you can lower the price, you get everyone's attention.
Absolutely.
And they would probably jump through a lot of hoops and waiting and time and all that. So what do you think about so Invisalign had bought, was it iTero, the scan?
That's correct.
Bought the iTero so you didn't have to take an impression.
Correct.
And you'd scan it. What do you think of optically scanning versus sending in impressions to make clear aligners?
I think we're getting there. I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of the quality of the scans or the speed of the scans. The most important thing for a general dentist or any dentist is basically the cost of the acquisition of these units, and obviously the speed of actually getting a scan and the quality. I think we're getting there, but the really good scanners are 30,000 sterling, which is probably about $50,000 plus, which is a little bit too high at this stage for every general dentist to acquire. And the technology has moved so quickly as well. I mean, by the time you buy this software, it's almost like buying a CEREC machine. You buy the machine and then within 2 years it's obsolete.
Just like an iPhone.
Just like an iPhone.
Just like an iPhone.
So I think they will reach a stage where you have multiple players. It will drop below the $15,000 range, and then it makes economic sense. You'll have to use a lot of.
But I disagree with everything you said, because that's why the dentist loves it. I mean, when I got out of school 30 years ago, the average overhead was 50%.
Yeah.
Now it's 65%. 20% of the dentists are at 80%. Yeah. So the dentist's mind is different. They'll say, okay, right now I'm taking a polyvinyl siloxane impression for $13. I can screw that up. I'll buy a $30,000 scanner and take this impression. I mean, it's like they love to spend money to drive up their overhead. And when you tell them, just take an old-fashioned impression and put it in a box and mail it to me, they're like, but then I'd have low overhead. But if I bought a $30,000 scanner, I could get my overhead up 15 more. I mean, it's like they wake up every day. Warren Buffett said that not only less than 5% of the CEOs in America get up every day and try to drive down their cost. He said 95% think working is spending money and debt, raising overhead. And they just, it's almost like they think that's their job.
And probably why the US economy is booming. Because it's that consumerism, this desire for consumerism. In Europe, especially in the UK, I think we're a little bit more hesitant to make those sort of degree of purchases because there's a lot of instability as well in the UK. Of course, we just left the EU. You've got lots of issues in terms of the state funding. With the NHS, there's a new contract coming through. So dentists at the moment are a little bit cautious, should we say, on making substantial investments. Because you do need to get a return of investment these days, and banks aren't so easy to lend. I don't know what they're like in the States, but they're not so easy to lend here.
In the United States, the problem is never getting the loan; it's always paying it back.
Right. And these dental students, the reason they come out with way too much student loans is because they loan them way too much money and all through school, and they buy $30,000 Japanese cars and go on $5,000 cruises because some idiot's giving them the money. So I'm going to switch to another thing about Invisalign, or orthodontics I love, is that in the United States, where 82% of the dentists have signed up for PPOs, preferred provider organizations, which are about a 40% discount on fee, in the NHS, where they pay $100 to do a root canal when there's no way you could do a root canal, and they set the prices for cleanings, exams, X-rays, Correct.
fillings in United Kingdom, Scotland, Wales. France, so many countries. When you do a procedure like ortho or an implant where you can't set your own fee, for instance, I know several dental offices in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore, or Malaysia and Indonesia, where they lose money on cleaning exams, X-rays, and fillings. But since they do 10 Invisalign cases a month, it's almost like I'll do all this noise for a break even or a loss because I'm sinking 15 implants a month and 15 Invisalign cases a month, and I'm making bank. So I just use this big NHS population to have a bunch of volume in my practice, because if I can do 10 Invisaligns and place 10 implants a month, I'm the richest guy on my street. Do you see that?
I see that in the UK. There are lots of clinics here which have maybe an array of 5 or 6 state-funded NHS clinics, and they have one satellite clinic which takes all their private specialist work. So they will do the implants, or the orthodontics, they will do the periodontics, because it's the numbers game. If you have 200,000 patients coming through those clinics, it just takes 2,000 of those to have advanced work, and that's what fuels up the clinic. So it's just your feeding mechanism to your specialist centre. Yeah, absolutely. There are plenty of examples of that in the UK.
And what's sad about American dentists is if they have a practice limited to cleanings, exam, X-rays, and minimally invasive direct composite resins, and they take PPOs, they basically are losing money on everything. Yeah. And the only time they start making money is when they jump to a crown, which pretty much they all do. But if they don't do the molar endo, which is another $1,000, or a denture or a partial, which is $1,000, or place an implant, which is $1,000, or ortho, which is several thousand, if they don't do those big procedures that all have 50% margin, they're in trouble. And it scares me. So a lot of the kids, which I'm excited about this, if you're one of those kids out there, say, I walked out of dental school and I don't like blood. I don't like surgery. I don't like pulling teeth. I don't want to place implants. I never want to do a sinus lift. I don't even like molar endo. Well, then you'd have to do Invisalign, or you'd have to do ortho. Absolutely. Or clear aligners.
Absolutely. Well, the patient demand is there. You've got a growing market of adult patients who basically are looking for smile improvement. If you don't treat them, they're going to go somewhere else. So, to offer those treatments, which can be pretty simplistic treatments, quite rewarding. They don't have huge long-term implications, something like a set of veneers, and they're not as expensive as veneers. These treatments are far more affordable. So there's going to be a far greater uptake. In terms of clinical time in your clinic, they're taking far less time up than you would actually. Most anterior alignment orthodontic cases would probably take 4 or 5 hours total, and you maybe $2,000-$3,000 on the case. And from that perspective, it can be quite profitable compared to a practice which has to do, like you said, has to do a molar endodontics for $100. And that might take over hours worth of treatment.
That's crazy. $100 for a molar root canal. Yeah. That's what you see in Japan. That's what you see in United Kingdom.
Yeah.
I mean, if that happened, if they did that in the United States and only paid $100 for root canal insurance, every American, I mean, they'd pull the tooth.
I think
you could barely make money pulling the tooth.
I was speaking to one of the largest supply companies in the UK.
Shine?
Dental Directory.
What is it?
Dental Directory. It's one of the. Shine is the biggest.
Okay.
But this is quite big as well. And it's interesting, when I was talking to one of the reps, they were saying that the volume of forceps and surgical appliances shot up in the last 3 or 4 years, but the amount of endodontic supplies has actually dropped. So you probably see that, as far as the general population is concerned, I think you've probably seen the number of extractions go up and endodontics drop down, because the economics, you wouldn't approach anything that's remotely difficult.
Well, it's game theory, and you just have to look at dental history. Like in the United States, Röntgen had invented the X-ray machine a century ago, but not one dental office really had it until in 1948. Longshoremen's of New Jersey dental insurance plan started, and they covered X-rays at 100%. And as dental insurance spread across the country covering X-rays at 100%, like a domino, every dentist started buying an X-ray machine. So first was the payment mechanism, and then was the X-ray machine. So if you only pay $100 for a root canal and it costs you $300 or $400 to provide it, well then
it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not.
The other problem actually in the UK, I don't know if it's like this in the States, is you've actually got unemployment now. You've got general dentists qualifying now who can't get a job.
In which country?
This country.
In the United Kingdom.
United Kingdom. So you've got general dentists who can't get employment now, because also we've also had an influx from Europe over because of the open borders. So there's been a less of demand for UK trained dentists to get for employment, and result of that, these younger dentists have had to accept lower paid jobs. Their contract values are far less. So they do struggle a lot, and I feel really sorry for these general dentists, because they've also qualified with a lot of debt because they have to pay for dental school.
In the UK, not France, but in the UK.
In the UK. So they've come out with maybe $200,000 worth of debt, and they've gone in for a job which is probably paying them less than a tube driver.
Less than a what?
A tube driver.
A what driver?
A subway driver.
A subway driver? What did you call it?
Tube.
Oh, a tube.
Underground.
In the tube. But it's funny because, it's not funny, but the worst is Brazil. Right. Brazil has 200 million people and more dentists than the United States. And the United States has 330 million people. And Brazil has more dentists, and half of them are never going to be able to make a living in dentistry. And there's still dental schools on every corner. And so it's funny when you... and India is going down that same route. Yeah. They just keep opening up dental schools everywhere. Right. Malaysia went from 1 dental school 10 years ago to 6 today. I mean, you can't go from 1 to 6 dental schools. No. So supply and demand is like gravity. And if and that's why I say to the Americans, you always find one thing wrong with the American Dental Association, and you throw it under a bus. But that's the only organization who's basically the only thing the American Dental Association really does for your return on investment is lobbying Congress. And if you don't get some control over supply and demand and the number of dental schools and number of graduates, well, just go to Brazil, go to India, go to Malaysia. I mean, if you think you can open up a dental school in every corner and that's not going to affect your income, you're actually insane.
Absolutely right. I wish the British Dental Association was like the ADA. Because it doesn't have the political lobbying that it should do. Because with these issues, it's only driving the quality of dentistry down. British dentistry being the 5th largest economy in the world, it should be the epitome of quality dentistry.
The UK is the 5th largest economy?
Yeah.
In the world?
In the world.
So name the top 5.
Now you're testing me. I assume it's America, Canada, Germany. That would be 3.
China.
China. So that's 4. 5th.
Yeah. Amazing. I want to. I want to ask you if this is true or not. So, when you formally, I have my MBA, Master's in Business from Arizona
Yes.
State University. That you're formally taught that, like American cars, they're low quality. When other people are selling cars made in Japan and Germany, they point out our cars last. So in American advertising, when you ever see an American car advertised, it's always like, we offer an extended warranty, bumper to bumper. We warranty everything will work. Well, you never hear Mercedes saying that,
No.
or Toyota or Infiniti, because everybody knows their car works. So whenever someone's saying something in an ad, that's the problem. Like the most popular cereal in America is Raisin Bran, and if you ever poured yourself a bowl of it, there's no raisins. So they always advertise there's 2 scoops of raisins in every box of Raisin Bran. So whenever I see someone saying an ad, I know that's the problem. That's what your competitors are selling against. So you're using money to try to reverse what everybody's saying. So it's a red flag to me when I see Invisalign keeps having so many ads saying, we can do more complex cases, we can do class 2s, we can do class 3s, we can do bicuspid. So when I see them saying they can do all these complex cases, my walnut brain immediately says, oh, that means you obviously can't do any of those cases. So my question to you in that long rant, sorry that was so long, was, do you think fixed wires and brackets is for complex cases and Invisalign is for moderate to mild cases?
I would personally agree. And speaking to a lot of orthodontists, most orthodontists will still go fixed appliances, and there's a reason for that, because you don't still have the same control as you would with aligners. So aligners, I would say, would be mild to moderate sort of cases, but more advanced cases, more complex cases, I think the predictability with brackets and wires is there. There is no, and there's a recent paper I saw that was in the British Orthodontic Journal, which was talking about a review of the efficiency of aligners, and they concluded that they're not as efficient. You're not going to get the predictability of tooth movements or the degree of tooth movements you would have got with fixed appliances. So I don't think it's there yet. I think it's good for a lot of patients, but I don't think it's the answer. And a lot of specialists, if you go in Europe or the UK, particularly, they still will offer fixed appliances being the gold standard. Invisalign has its market, but it's not going to be for every single patient. Absolutely not. And I think one thing that does concern me about a lot of marketing is I spoke to a colleague recently about this. I saw an advert once where someone had a report somewhere in the newspaper where someone had a problem with a knee operation, and the person was saying, I've been through 3 knee operations, still not perfect, not able to walk right. Now I'm going to go in for my 4th revision. Now, if that's a dental implant, we put a dental implant in and it fails, then it's straight down the lawyers. Because the problem I think with dentistry now, it's become so commoditized. Everything's buying products. We are literally, the biology's gone, the science is gone, the education is gone. It's now we are commodities. If things go wrong, well, I paid for that. I expected that to work. And, in other parts of medicine, it's not true. They have an operation, something doesn't quite go to plan. The patient's almost ready to accept, I might need to go in and have my 2nd double bypass. First one didn't quite work. In implants or anything else that we do in dentistry, and that puts a lot of pressure on our colleagues. And I think the problem with a lot of this commoditization, which is like Invisalign, we're losing that touch, which is the practitioner being able to be the clinician that they're supposed to be, rather than deliver off a product.
Well, what I tell my patients, if my implant fails, I just say, well, what do you expect? You had it made in America. If you wouldn't have done right, you would have gone to Germany and had a Mercedes implant, or Japan and had a Lexus implant, but you had a Chevy implant made by me in America. What do you expect? And no, I'm just kidding. But what is tell them more. What is on, if they go to www.iasortho.com. Okay, so talk to this little girl. She just came out of dental school. She's the orthodontist made sure she learned nothing.
Absolutely. Just
And
like
she wants to learn some anterior alignment because she doesn't want to file down all the teeth and do crowns. She wants to unravel them so she could do a bleaching bonding veneer case. How do you go from 0 to completing your first ortho case? What is she going to find on iasortho.com?
I think anyone who comes out from dental school now wants to offer some orthodontics, and I think as a general dental practitioner, I think it's perfectly capable to offer simple orthodontics straight off, especially with removable appliances. I think the most important thing is to try and avoid the commercial blurb that you get about certain brackets being special, certain wires being special, because there is no such thing as special brackets and wires. There's no magic. All brackets and wires will move teeth in the same way. The most important thing to learn evidence-based dentistry, and make sure what you do learn, you learn how to carry out orthodontics in the same way that an orthodontist would, because at the end of the day, whether that patient gets treated by an orthodontist or a general dental practitioner, the same assessment needs to be carried out, the same diagnosis needs to be come out, and the same treatment planning needs to be the same. And I find with a lot of courses out there, it's all about putting the brackets on and putting the treatment together without getting the fundamentals of the diagnosis and assessment. That's where the IAS is different, because we try and give you the fundamentals of being able to understand the etiology, the causes of the malocclusion. You may not be able to resolve the malocclusion, but you can spot the issues and spot what you can and can't treat. And I would start off as someone new, starting with simple removals, doing simple anterior alignment. As your confidence builds up, as your case volume increases, then maybe going to simple fixed. And if you want to go further and be able to offer more complex cases like adults, kids, extraction cases, maybe functional appliances, then we have a course which is a more protracted course. And each course has the same underlying core fundamentals. So the principles of correct planning, assessment, and digital planning is all the same. So it becomes very easy to stepstone between. And I think the more options you can present to patients, the more you'll be able to keep in-house. But the most important thing is working within your capacity and making sure that you follow a program which has a correct support and has a correct mentorship. The IAS, we have a collaboration between specialists and general dentists that provide direct one-to-one mentorship on all the cases at each stage. And we don't allow any of our dentists to just go ahead with a case or send stuff to the lab without being pre-screened by us first. You know, one problem I have with things like Invisalign and ClinChecks is a ClinCheck is just a tool. It's not a diagnostic tool, an assessment tool, it's just a visual representation. I think as a young dentist, you need to be working with a colleague to work out what's appropriate, and then work with the diagnostic digital tools to work out what the treatment possibilities are. But you always need to be mentored. I think that's critical.
So, on the website, it's not an online. Are there online courses?
We don't. The reason why we don't do online courses is we feel that we do have sort of online modules, so, in terms of maybe photography modules or how to do an assessment. But I think in terms of actual appliance learning, we need to do it hands-on. There are lots of hands-on procedures.
And right
I don't think you can learn that from.
And right now, you have those courses going on regularly, mainly in the UK.
Most in the UK, because the academy itself has been around for a year and a half as a full academy, full operational academy, and now we want to roll it out in other parts around the world.
Well, I hope one of your rollouts, for 81% of my listeners are from the United States. You might consider rolling it out in Phoenix.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you got an on-stop flight, and we'd help you market it and all that stuff. And then I also, I know when you think of ortho, you always think of, cosmetics, women that want to look better looking, more so than men. But that pediatric dentistry, being able to look into a 6-year-old's mouth and knowing if you can avert a lot of trouble, that's
absolutely
so
right.
Real and important.
I agree with you 100%, Howard. I mean, it'd be so much better if you can spot the early problems of malocclusion. Can you spot the airway issues? Can you spot the anomalous in the development of the jaws? Can you see you might have to do some sort of relief of the initial crowd in the earlier stages to avoid more complex treatment later on? Can you spot the canines getting impacted? Have you spotted their missing teeth? I mean, all of these things, if we can train GDPs to be at least do the assessments, I think it's absolutely critical. Even if you're referring on to a specialist colleague for more complex, you're going to help patients if you can have some degree of understanding of orthodontics, rather than waiting too late and the patient's now in their 13, 14 years old and they've now got severe malocclusion. And a lot of that could have been resolved with maybe functional appliances or much earlier on in their lives.
Let me ask a question they're asking a lot around the world. Can you still do high-quality orthodontics with old-fashioned two-dimensional pano and ceph, or do you really need to invest $100,000 into three-dimensional CVCT?
My personally and a lot of my colleagues, I don't see the advantage of using a CBCT at this stage. In the UK especially, because of our regulations on radiography, we have to really justify the need for radiography, and we don't even take CEFs that often.
You don't even take CEFs that often?
CEFs that only for really orthodontic cases or extreme cases where, see, a lot can be visually examined by just looking at someone's profile.
Yeah, because an x-ray of the head,
yeah,
and it picks up the thyroid.
You pick the thyroid, you pick the brain, you're zapping the brain.
Yeah.
You know, so the justification these days is much harder. And you've got to question is, would my clinical decision have changed with that CEF? So the question is, a lot of skeletal discrepancies you can pick up just by looking at someone's face. You know, you just have to look extraordinary, and you can look at things like skeletal patterns, the transverse relationships.
And you should never just say, well, everybody that gets ortho gets a pano and a CEF.
Correct.
Because then you're not even a doctor, you're a robot.
Correct.
I mean, you're a droid. I mean,
Absolutely.
but you know, and it's funny because when you have 4 babies and I have a granddaughter, I don't want you x-raying my granddaughter's 4-year-old head.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I just don't.
And I think these days with orthodontics, the type of contemporary orthodontics is not about treating to a CEF or treating to a model. It's about treating to the face. So it's about putting those teeth in the right place. It's about support of the soft tissues. It's about aesthetics. And it's dentofacial aesthetics is the key. And the problem when you try to treat to averages to a CEF doesn't end up with the correct aesthetics at the end. So, you know, I think it's quite important to look at the whole external arrangement.
My job is to estimate the what my homies are, what questions they're having. Most of these people are commuting to work. They have an hour commute on the train, the car, the bus, whatever. And a lot of them are probably wondering, is orthodontics related to sleep medicine? In the United States, 5 years ago, you never heard anything about sleep apnea.
Yeah.
And now you can't pick up a magazine or newspaper. In fact, one of the #1 New York Times best-selling books right now is by Arianna Huffington on sleep medicine. So American patients are being bombarded with sleep apnea. Is this related to orthodontics? Anything you do, teach? Talk about sleep apnea.
I think sleep apnea is a very big subject. I think it's a real problem. I think it's underestimated how much that actually is a problem, because obviously the repercussions is hypertension, diabetes, you know, coronary heart disease, and I think people underestimate where we are. And also the social issue that a lot of partners, you know, one partner has to sleep in a totally different room, probably a different house, you know, because it breaks down relationships. But it's all down to making sure that the airways are patent. It's trying to keep the airways open. So I think in some cases, although the evidence behind orthodontics and airways is a little bit, the evidence base behind it is still not conclusive. But if you can keep someone's airway open, a young kid, you can keep the it helps with the malocclusion, a broader arch, keeping the tongue in the right place, getting the breathing going. I think that's quite important. And if we can do that, and rather than have collapsed dentitions, we are going to improve people's breathing patterns.
Amazing, because you see some people already advertising on their website of treating it with orthodontic surgery.
Yeah.
Have you seen some of these?
I've seen it. I've seen people sort of, and I think it gets to a point, where it becomes, it is, for a lot of people, a major issue in their lives, sleep apnea. I mean, otherwise you've got to sleep with a positive pressure seat.
Well, it's funny because when we were little, this is too much information for a podcast, but we would always wonder why we went to Grandma and Grandpa's house in their bedroom. One grandma and grandpa, they slept in separate rooms, and you go to the other grandma and grandma, they slept in separate rooms. And we were little like, why don't they sleep together? And now you hear that one of the biggest secret taboos among married couples is, hey, the minute you fall asleep, I don't want some big ape rolling over on me and kicking me and snoring. And they just kind of gradually, over the years, you start with this honeymoon, sleeping and snuggling, and then as time goes by, you're like, I'm exhausted in the morning because you kicked and tossed and snored and jerked and kicked, and they eventually end up, by the time they're grandmas and grandpas, they say 4 in 10 American couples, by the time they're grandpas, are naturally evolved to sleeping in separate rooms. And I love sleeping alone. I don't even like it when my cats get in the room, because they'll wake you up. I was talking to a patient the other day, and we were talking about sleep, and she said, well, the problem with my sleep is my dog's always barking at every noise. I said, what the hell's your dog doing in your bed? If he's barking all night, get him the hell out of your bed. Get him out of the room. And she goes, well, then he'll cry. I go, well, you want to be exhausted every morning or have a crying dog?
Absolutely. And I think the other problem with sleep apnea, of course, is it's the danger to people who suffer from sleep apnea during the daytime because their attention spans are dropped. They go through phases where they can just go into they can go through they might be driving, because a lot of people don't realise there's sleep apnea, and that they might just switch off for accidents, and there's a real problem, and the attention span in these people might be in very important jobs, and it's affecting their lives.
So this is Dentistry Uncensored. So you haven't mentioned price. How much? Tell us how much this cost. They go to IASortho.com. They can email you, Anoop, at IASortho.com.
Quite happy to answer any questions.
But what's the price of this?
Price of the courses? If we do,
because I assume the price has gone down now that the Britain exited from the EU and the pound dropped 20%.
Now your currency is so good. We want your currency.
Yeah.
We'll do it for $1.
Now you want to come to the United States just to get the US dollar to pay for your course.
We just come across for $1. But so roughly the sort of cost is for a 2-day course is probably equivalent of about $1,000. For our 2-day, and that teaches you fixed braces and includes free mentorship afterwards on your cases. For something like an Inman liner or clear liner course, which is normally a single day course, that's probably in the region of about $500. Our advanced course, which goes over about 14 months worth, the total cost of that is in the region of probably about $15,000. And
I got to remind you Americans that when you're in New York City, because 2 out of 3 Americans live within 500 miles of where the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth Rock by Boston, and from New York to Phoenix is 5.5 hours. From New York to London's only 6. From Phoenix nonstop to London's only 9 hours. London's the coolest town. So if you've never been to London, I mean, my God, don't let that pond be a psychological barrier and say, well, I don't want to go to Europe. It's cheaper. Saying America, it's really not. It's really not any cheaper. It's a 6-hour flight, and things are really less expensive in a lot of other countries than America. And
one thing about our particular training, and a lot of people remark who've done other courses, there's no high pressure selling. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're not trying to buy 50 packs from us or.
Well, that's just because you're not American.
We're not American.
If you're an American, you'd be buy 10, get 3 for free, but you got to sign right now.
Yeah, we don't have that, but there's. And also in the course fees include the orthodontic instruments. So we actually provide you with the instruments to start off with.
So a lot of Americans, you're not supposed to ever talk about religion, sex, politics, or violence, but I have to ask you because we're almost out of time, but Americans are probably wondering, your country, the United Kingdom, which is England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, just voted to pull out of the EU, and the American newspapers will sum it up in one paragraph. And on TV, it'll be a 30-second news clip. You're a dentist; they respect you more than their own journalists. What does that mean to you? Could you care less? Did you care?
I think the problem was Europe was in trouble. The European Union wasn't working. A lot of the countries were in debt. There was a lot of bailing going out from Germany and England. I mean, it was costing us £350 billion a year. So. I've probably got that figure wrong, but there's substantial sums each year. I think it wasn't working as a community, and you had more countries joining which didn't have the financial backing behind. The problem, I think, that's the timing of our exit. We didn't sort of leave with a plan B, because I don't think anyone really expected the vote to go in favour for leave. The whole city had anticipated and predicted that we're going to remain. So we're now left without a plan B. And I think that's where the uncertainty is coming in, because now the UK has to survive on its own, and it has to develop new trading partners very quickly and get these. Otherwise, we're going to have problems with our trade deficit, etc. So, it's important now the UK stands up, companies continue to invest here, because a lot of companies may move to different parts because the UK was a hub for Europe. So, from that perspective, I think there's turmoil ahead. I think it's going to affect the economy. There's no doubt the economy will take a little bit of a hit. I think it'll affect dentists, because when confidence drops, then patients' confidence drops and their spend drops. So, it's some little bit difficult times ahead, but I think in the long term, no doubt we're better off. Being outside Europe, it was a good idea because it wasn't working for the country anyway. The demands from massive influxes of people from Europe in this country because it literally was an open border. We're putting a lot of strain on our infrastructure, on our schooling, our state systems. Plus, you had countries like Spain, which were completely bankrupt. Italy, which was bankrupt. And you needed countries like UK and Germany to provide a lot of bail-in, which obviously is not where, doesn't have a good long-term repercussions for us in our economy.
But what's funny is you say Spain is bankrupt, Greece is bankrupt. What's funny is I live in America and I have an MBA. America is completely bankrupt and they don't even know it. They have $19 trillion of debt and almost $60 trillion of unfunded liabilities. Everybody that pays taxes retires with Social Security, but everybody who worked for the government gets Social Security and a pension, and they never put away any money for those pensions. It's a pyramid scheme. Yeah. And as the women went from having 5 babies to 2 babies to now under 2 babies a family, there's no physical way they'll ever repay any of that stuff. And so right now the only thing the politicians going to be saying is, if you vote for me, I'm going to have to drop a lot of these pensions or cut these pensions, drop the COLAs, the cost of living increase. I'm going to have to cut pensions and raise taxes. And what are the 2 leading candidates saying? Vote for me and all health care will be free, all education will be free.
Which is not going to happen.
And then on the Republican side is, you vote for me, I'll lower taxes. It's like America is completely insane financially. Completely crazy. But a little personal, more close to home for you. We're in Scotland right now. Some of the stuff that I'm hearing is that Scotland a year or so ago voted. They had a vote to succeed from the UK, correct, and they barely voted to stay. But now that the England voted to pull out of the EU, now I'm hearing a lot of Scots at the bar last night and in our hotel saying that if they reheld that election today, Scotland would withdraw from the UK. Do you agree with what I just said? Is that an issue?
That's what I've heard as well. I mean, if you looked at who actually voted to actually remain, it was London and Scotland. There was the 2 main hubs of actually people wanted to remain. Everywhere else around the country, they actually voted to leave.
So Wales and Northern Ireland?
Absolutely. Now, there is also talk, the problem we also face now is probably the unification breaking down. There is talk now Northern Ireland might fuse with Ireland, potentially Scotland getting independence. So I think it's going to be strange times ahead of us.
Well, I'm 100% Irish, so if Northern Ireland fused with Southern Ireland, what would that do to the price of beer? Because that's the only issue that will matter for the Irish.
The problem for me now is I'll need a visa to go and drink a proper Guinness. Before I could just fly over on a cheap flight on a low-cost airline for about $20, I could get. Nice.
Well, hey, we have the Dental Town Online CE. We have the hardest time. We can't get board-certified orthodontists to teach general dentists on Online CE. They just won't. They won't talk to us. So if you ever can grace us with
we would be
orthodontic courses.
Yeah, we're like the IAS Academy is collaboration. We have about 4 or 5 orthodontists which work with us, and a lot of those are academic orthodontists. The head of director of the ISS training programs is Professor Ross Hobson, who is the consultant professor at Newcastle University. So someone like him would be a great person who could go ahead and do maybe some modules for you. And
say what the IAS stands for again. The
Intelligent Alignment Systems.
Say it again.
Intelligent Alignment Systems.
Intelligent Alignment Systems.
Yeah.
No offense, it's so hard for an American to understand these British Scottish accents.
When I got a cold.
They're speaking English, but you're not quite sure. But it's an intelligent alignment systems. So is it hard for you to understand Americans? And I know.
I've been to certain parts of America, and I go, what?
Yeah, America's got a lot of different accents. New Yorkers versus Southerners, okay. Well, hey, congratulations on all that you're doing for dentistry. Thank you for all that you're doing for the consumer. I think it's really cool that you're driving down the price of ortho. I mean, I think every dentist should keep one eye on the patient and one eye on costs. And I think you should use your brain to drive down cost until your patient has the freedom to afford what it is they want. And I think you're a big part of that. Thank you very much.
I think it's not just driving down. I think cost is really important, but not with it compromise the quality.
Right.
Delivering both is important.
Make it better, faster, higher quality, but lower in
Absolute-
price.
Correct.
And everyone who's ever, by the way, I get a request to sign a non-disclosure agreement probably every week or month since I've started Dental Town. And I don't sign them because I don't feed the lawyers. We have 1 million attorneys. They bill out $1 trillion a year in a $19 trillion economy. I freaking hate that. But they hate attorneys. But the other reason I don't do it is because what's Shark Tank? Anybody who spends all their money getting patents and all that stuff never is successful. You know, first make your prototype, go to market, did anybody buy it? And then with those profits, go get your patent and all that kind of stuff. Because 99% of new products, 99% of patents will never generate enough profit to pay off the patent attorney. And just on Shark Tank, I mean, if you're not building it faster, better, higher quality, and lower cost, they say, I'm sorry, I pass. I mean, when you come to a solution and say, I fixed this problem and it costs more money for less people, well, that's stuff for kings and queens. America is not about kings and queens, it's about the common man. You build a product for the rich classes, you'll go bankrupt and live with the masses. You build a low-cost, high-quality product for the masses, you'll make so much money, you'll live with the classes. So America is about making everything faster, better, higher quality, lower cost, so that every one of those 1/3 billion people can buy it. And when you start making stuff for just the rich people, you're not going to get any investment dollars, and I'm not going to sign a non-disclosure agreement to hear about your crazy idea. I tell people when they send me a non-disclosure agreement, I don't want to see your non-disclosure agreement. I want to see your prototype. Why don't you send it to me, and I'll use it on a patient on Monday. And you don't have any of that. You just have a legal document and a lawyer.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Absolutely.
I don't want to be Mark Cuban, but I'll pass. Or what does Cuban say? I'm out. But again, Anoop, thank you so
very
much for being on my show.
Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
buddy.
it.